Hi, Professor. I hopefully am going to be better on this blog than I was on the last one, so we'll give it a try. It's really distracting to me because there's a little lag and delay in this video watching myself. I'm like, okay, I just said something, I'm just seeing my lips move to that, so anyway, we'll try to get past that. And I've got my notes typed up. I lost them in my computer and I had to retype everything, so it's what it is. All right, first of all, I'm just going to run down the questions the way they were asked. The first question was, describe neo-evolution. What is it and what are its primary tenets? Well, I think this is not going to come as a surprise to you, but I don't actually believe in evolution the way science describes it. I don't see any evidence for it opposed to biblical creation, and I'm a creationist, so I'm just going to put that out there. But because the assignment asked for me to answer these questions, I will answer them in the way that I understand them, and just go with that. I do believe that there are some things where science and Bible converge and they bear one another out, but I don't think that evolution is one of those things. And that's my belief. Anyway, that being said, neo-evolution, as described by Feinberg, as I understand, is when evolution is guided or pushed by choices that we as humans make, as opposed to traditional evolution, where those who survive are the ones who adapt best to their environment, or, in other words, letting nature take its course. It's very similar to what Wolf was saying about bioengineering. And actually, that whole thing that Wolf was talking about when it came to sources and ligers and things like that, I found that really, really super interesting. It's kind of like some of the things I see on Facebook, like, which is the topic of my, of my paper. It's almost like you would see something like that on Facebook and go, what? No, I don't think so. That's too incredulous. But, something like that, a lot of times I would not believe unless I saw a credible source to it. So when I saw it on the TED Talk, obviously I know it's right and it's true. That's just crazy. To me, that's just weird science. But that's where we're at. A lot of weird science going on. One of those situations where fact is stranger than fiction, right? Okay, provide an example of a technology that is altering or may alter human evolution. Well, obviously, when people can choose the gender of their kids rather than what might be best for society, or to eliminate diseases in children before they're born, and that would, of course, include sorry about that. That would obviously affect the population, because if you can control diseases and which genders are born, well, basically it's gonna speak to who can live longer. And if that happens, I agree with Fukuyama in what he wrote, and I had already thought about this before I even read that. It would affect this economical impact, like Social Security. If the U.S. Social Security wasn't already drained, everybody talks about it being drained. And people began to live longer and longer, and they don't work as long, but they're living as, what I'm saying. It's going to really drain the Social Security system. And in fact, I think I read it by Fukuyama, it already has started doing that in Japan. They're already facing that crisis. So that would have an impact economically speaking. And let's see, the Human Genome Project, which has mapped out the body's human DNA sequence. I guess at the time when Feinberg made the presentation in 2011, it was already able, it already mapped out the body's DNA sequences. And at the time of his presentation, I guess he said you could buy for about $20,000 a 3 million base pair of DNA. Of course, if you had $20,000 hanging around, which most of us don't. And then he said that maybe at some point it would come down to about $1,000. And I thought that's pretty doable for a lot of people by, with a credit card or something. And that's pretty incredible to think about, that you could buy your own DNA strand and manipulate that for $1,000. I tried to look something up about that, but I didn't come up with anything to see where they were with that right now. And I did look up a lot of research in addition to what I read, and I included those on the YouTube video. By the way, you see them there, listed, in the description. And I did that on the first video. I just didn't put the URLs. But anyway, going on here, I found it really interesting that they were talking about, Fiber was talking about the two science that encouraged evolution to develop more quickly and help the needed proteins to be used in a more efficient way for that. And how one of the scientists, Francis Arnold, called it self-directed evolution. I was curious about Francis Arnold, and I looked something up about her. Apparently, Miss Arnold, and her husband died, so she's a mess now. But apparently, her efforts to rewrite DNA has contributed to a lot of things, including making medications like Juvia for diabetes. And it's just, her research has been phenomenal in a lot of ways. So that was pretty interesting there. And then he was also talking about another scientist who took a fibroblast, and by manipulating 4 genes, caused that fibroblast to revert to a stem cell, which, as we know, could become any other cell in your body. That's pretty wild stuff. It's good stuff, but wild stuff. And I'll get back to stem cells a little bit later. So what are the potential benefits of this type of technology? Well, obviously, like I said, eradicating diseases, even the ova, or prenatally. On a side note, one interesting story that I had found concerning bioengineering specifically was that story that Michael Best told about, what's that guy's name? Johnny Ray, where he was locked in and he was able to blink and type out messages eventually using mind power. We had seen an episode of a show called Limitless where the guy takes a smart pill, and he constructed a very similar technology, and he built this machine for this guy who was locked in, and the guy was able to testify for a court hearing. And it's just one of those cases where, fiction is emulating fact. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if they looked this up or not, probably. But see, what are the potential drawbacks? Well, I would say using it for the wrong reasons, obviously. I mean, if you could produce a string of, let's just call them superhumans, for lack of a better phrase, that could be leagues ahead physically, intelligently, who could be resistant to viruses and bacteria. You could build yourself a super army if a dictator or the kind of wrong political people or generals get a hold of that technology, or even people in organized crime. You can just imagine what they would do with that. So I would say those are some of the potential drawbacks of something like that. And there are more, obviously, but just briefly. And my videos are never brief, so I don't know why I bother to say briefly. See, what are the moral and ethical implications of neo-evolution? That's a long one. I really think Feinberg summed it up well when he said the question is whether we would develop wisdom to be able to make the correct decisions going forward. Because we as humans, sometimes I think we just get ahead of ourselves scientifically. We come up with all these great technologies and then they go the wrong direction, or we don't know what really to do with them. So are we going to really have the wisdom to know what to do with them without messing up along the way? I would agree with him on that. And going back to that article by Francis Fukuyama, when he referred to Dolly the sheep, I was very interested in speaking about the telomeres, the shortened telomeres that they gave her, and how he said that she may not live as long as a normal sheep. Well, that was written back, of course, in 2002 as part of a book. So I was wondering when Dolly had died. I wasn't quite sure. And I found out that, pardon me, that she had died in early 2003 after having gotten arthritis and a lung disease. and she aged really prematurely. She was only 6, where most sheep could live to like 11 or 12. So to me, that just brings that right back around to humans not really fully comprehending this technology of cloning and bioengineering and what they can do with it. It's almost like nature just kicking us in the face saying, you're not ready to do this. Just let us do our thing. Like nature just saying, let me do my thing and you guys just stay there and do your thing. That's what that made me think about. I think ethically, there is that whole question of embryonic stem cell research. For me, that's an issue because I do believe that life exists upon conception. I know that's a really tough one for a lot of people. It's a whole big question. Where does life begin? But that's my belief. I'm not God. I can't say, okay, well, a soul just enters the minute an embryo is created. If it's outside a woman and it's in a lab dish and an embryo is created, does a soul enter it, or does it have to be inside a woman's womb? I don't know. I'm not God. I can't say these things. So I really don't know. But I think it's tricky, and I think we have to be careful what we mess with, So I understand now, as I was doing some research, that they can stimulate a person's own cells to behave like stem cells and without using an embryo. So yeah, that sounds pretty good. But I do believe also I read, if I'm not mistaken, that the research itself for that still requires an embryo for study. Now, I also know that, Obama overturned the limit on stem cell research that Bush had put on it. And I think that may be limited to fertility treatment leftovers, if I understand correctly. Of course, that still comes back to damaging the embryos. So it's that whole question again, And as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Feinberg had made note of the scientist who had developed a way for a stem cell to be created by manipulating 4 genes. So it does sound like we're getting closer to using a person's own genes for stem cells. And in fact, I found an article on using adult stem cells from blood marrow to help people with certain illnesses, maybe even help paraplegics and things like that in the future. I guess my only question on that would be if they develop this technology, or maybe they have, but I mean, who could afford it? Is it going to be something that most insurances would cover? Because I have a hard time thinking so. I'm thinking the lower level insurance policies are not going to cover something like that, and you're going to have a certain amount of wealth. I just can see something like that creating more breach than we already have in social economic classes. Only those who have the money can afford to get better or get the healing they need. So maybe that could be an issue right there. And an interesting side note on that, I found an article at bioethics.com that said they're now working on creating a hybrid of human-animal embryos. They're called chimeras, and maybe in that way, human diseases can maybe be studied and organs can be grown in animals that could be used for transplants and such. And then in a similar article at the same site, it said that one scientist said that the Pope had actually blessed his work in making chimeras. That's just that kind of thing that makes you, scratch your head and go, weird science again, right? I don't know. The last question is, should we continue to pursue this form of technology? Why or why not? Well, that's a tough question. That's really tough. The short answer for me is, for the right reasons and through the right methodology, yes. For the wrong reasons, through the wrong methodology, no. And I know it's not black and white. There are huge gray areas in that. I don't think there is a black and white answer for that. I don't see how there could be a black and white answer for that. I don't think it's a yes or no answer. I mean, it has a lot of potential, bioengineering, and, this whole neo-evolution, as they call it. You can see there's a lot of potential in it, but I just don't know. I mean, if it falls in the wrong hands, like I said, or it becomes something where the wealth classes are divided even more, that's a tough one. I mean, if we can eradicate, diseases and things on that level, I would say yes. If we can create a person's own stem cells and help them, then I would say yes, without, having to create and damage a bunch of embryos. And yeah, I'm on board all the way. And on the other hand, if the technological lines in bioengineering become so blurred, as Wolf says, I mean that you don't even know the difference in some of the species, and you can't catalog some of the species because you're making so many hybrids for the sake of production and profits. Yeah, I would agree with Wolf. That could be a real problem. I mean, it's literally taking things out of the hands of nature and just pushing it full steam ahead for profits. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it. I mean, they're already adding GMOs, to the food we eat. They're already, just messing with animals the way that they put them together so closely. And we all know it's not good for us to eat. The animals are stressed out. I mean, that's been proven. And now they're trying to hybrid these animals together for more production and profit. I just don't know if it's a really good idea. And obviously, as I already said, how do you stop the wrong individuals from getting this kind of technology? I mean, if something like this were to be where a country's scientists could get a hold of the technology and they wanted to use it for the wrong reasons or against other countries, then you got a real problem. I think it's just like Feinberg asked, who would benefit from this technology the most? Only the rich? Further driving that wedge between the social economic classes, or ultimately, is it going to more benefit the human race? I still can't help but feel like maybe some of these things is just playing with life and nature a little bit too much. So basically, that is my answer to that last question. It's been a pleasure talking to you again. I'm not sure if I'll miss making these videos, but I do enjoy making videos, putting them together, not quite like this. So anyway, it's been nice talking to you again. Thanks for putting up with my long videos and everything. I appreciate that. Bye-bye.